Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Nova Scotia Immigration and Population Growth Solutions for Employers with Labor Needs workshop. I'm Peter MacAskill, Chief Operating Officer for Nova Scotia Business Inc., and I'll be moderating today's discussion. After years of declining or stagnating population, last year we celebrated our Nova Scotian population surpassing the 1 million mark for the first time ever. While so many of us have longed for a return to normal, there's no denying the pandemic has shone a light on an opportunity for Nova Scotia. We know it's a great place to live, work, and do business, and now word has gotten out. At the same time, the pandemic has also exacerbated the tightness of our labor market. Immigration has played a large part in growing the population in Nova Scotia. The Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration continues to work with employers to find innovative ways to respond to employer needs where there are shortages and to help streamline and navigate the immigration process. But just what are the steps and responsibilities of businesses looking for labor solutions through immigration? Today's workshop guests will help you understand how our province benefits from immigration and what programs are available to employers. I'm pleased to be joined today by Jennifer L'Esperance, Senior Executive Director, Immigration and Population Growth Branch for the Nova Scotia Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration. Jennifer's been working in Nova Scotia's immigration branch for 3.5 years as Director of Strategic Policy and External Relations, then the Director of Programs, and now Acting Senior Executive Director. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the work at LSI.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm sure during the panel I'll talk quite a bit about the work happening here, but our goal is to have programs that respond to employers' labor needs. We know that there are many critical labor needs in the labor market right now, and we're doing our best to work with employers and make sure we're able to have programs that respond to those needs.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm also very happy to have Lenita Hanson, Operations and Product Development Manager and co-owner at Tony's Meats Limited. Hailing from Saskatchewan, Lenita has put her background in biology to use, spending the last 20 years working in various manufacturing capacities within the food industry, including shell eggs, ice cream, and bakery. Lenita is passionate about living and working in the community of Antigonish, I'll flash the X ring here, Oilers hockey, and of course, Rider football. Thanks for joining us today, Lenita. Lenita, can you tell us a little bit about Tony's Meats?
Certainly. Thanks so much for having me, Peter. Tony's Meats is a federally registered halal and U.S. export certified further processing meat facility. We have a staff of 60 employees, and we produce a wide range of raw and fully cooked products for retail and food service. Our Mr. Donaire line, bacon, hams, deli meats, shelf-stable meat snacks. And we're also a private label co-packer, which is a new area of venture for our business.
Great. Thanks, Lenita. Getting close to lunch and you're mentioning Donaire's. So Jennifer, let's start with you. Last week, your department announced that Nova Scotia recorded our highest number of landed immigrants in 1 year ever, welcoming 9,020 permanent residents in 2021. Congratulations, by the way. What do you think is the driving force behind this success? And how has COVID impacted immigration?
Thank you. Yes, we were very excited to see the numbers. The numbers represent the applications that we support through our office, as well as federal economic programs and federal humanitarian programs. But the bulk of the applications, the bulk of the people who are landing and becoming permanent residents, representing those over 9,000 people, are coming through our programs and the federal economic programs. So these are people who are coming to work with their families in Nova Scotia and meet those employer labor needs. We saw the federal processing start to catch up to our own processing throughout the year last year. So as the year started, we knew that COVID was impacting the federal processing. We were continuing to process it in the province all throughout COVID. But as the federal government started to catch up, we saw month after month the increasing in landings and people receiving permanent residency last year. So it was really exciting to end the year at over 9,000, which is about 1,500 over our highest landings ever. And that's really because of the strong partnerships that we have with employers. So our programs only work if we're meeting those employer labor needs. And so we spend a lot of our time and effort making sure that we're listening to employers, that we're changing our programs so that we're meeting employer needs. We had several program changes this year, one being our permanent Atlantic immigration program, others being some policy changes that allow more employers to access our streams, reduce some of those barriers, and make sure that we're able to fill some of those chronic labor market needs. We're also spending a lot of time on our marketing. So we market our programs internationally to the people who are ready and able and have the skills and experience to fill our labor needs. And we've also expanded that marketing to inter-provincial migration. So we have a marketing campaign right now targeted at healthcare workers and skilled trade workers to be able to come from other parts of Canada to Nova Scotia to not only fill those labor needs, but also fill the healthcare needs and the housing stock that we need to continue to grow our immigration numbers. I think part of your question was also specific to COVID. So we know that COVID had many impacts. We had to change and adjust as COVID changed and adjusted our lives. We continued to process our applications, but we also kept a really strong look on the labor market, talking with sector associations, with individual employers, and really figured out what employers needed to help fill those gaps. We continue to adapt during the pandemic, and we're really seeing the benefits of that now as we're getting higher and higher immigration landings.
Great, thank you. You mentioned meeting labor needs of employers, so luckily we have one here with us today. Lenita, even in the days before the pandemic, Tony's Meats turned to immigration to address your workforce needs. Can you tell us how you recognize this need? How important is it? And how important is it to you that the province has made immigration and population growth key priorities?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Well, I think there's a long history at Tony's Meats of recruiting foreign workers. I can go back 35 years. Might have been the first recruitment effort where he's still here, Butcher Master, was recruited from Germany, and he's announced he's going to retire next year. So we are actually in the process of processing paperwork for another German-trained Butcher Master, which will join our company later this year. So that was kind of the start, and we closed the slaughter floor in 2013, but prior to that, there was a pretty significant need for knife skill, which the Canadian market could not supply. And so I would say in kind of late 2000s is really where the company started consistently bringing over foreign workers. Like I say, at that time it was to fill that need, but as we've seen population changes within Nova Scotia, it's excellent to see the in-migration. We're very happy to see those numbers, and for the programs that have been put forward by the province to aid our business to be able to grow. As I mentioned, we're U.S. export certified. That's a market that we're just starting to try and break into. And if we are successful, which we hope we will be, growth could come quickly. And being located rurally, we do need to look to foreign workers to prop up our business. We're certainly not taking away jobs locally. We're really hiring anybody that fits the criteria locally. We're more than happy and trying to, of course, cultivate that avenue as well for recruitment. But definitely, and particularly through COVID, because our business being an essential service business, we never closed for one day as per our normal operating hours. We did have some employees that had to work from home for health reasons. So we were hiring constantly through the pandemic. And, some of the foreign workers that did come in during that time were students that were able to move their student visas to work visas. So it was really tricky. We did actually have one person come in from the Philippines, and there were some COVID-related delays, but we certainly did still recruit from abroad during that time period.
Great. Sounds like you have another application coming on the way there, Jennifer. So, Jennifer, we know there's provincial and federal supports that are available for employees. So, what are the different programs? How do they work? How does one find out if the jobs they're looking for are eligible for these programs?
Sure, yeah, and I saw one of the questions in the chat too about the process as well. I know that there's a perception that immigration can be challenging, it can be daunting. I always say that there's a good mix in terms of we want people to really do the due diligence required when they're making decisions for them and their family to move to another country permanently. So there's some due diligence in the process that is there on purpose, but at the same time, we do want to keep it as streamlined and efficient as possible to get the people here that employers need in a reasonable time frame. So we have two main programs: our provincial nominee program and our Atlantic immigration program. They work differently, but they are quite complementary. Everyone has a bit of a different situation that they can make the decision as to which program works best for them. For the Atlantic immigration program, you do need to be a designated employer. So if you go to our website, and I can include our website in the chat if you'd like, you can see how you can apply to be a designated employer. We do have a new online system for AIP, so we're hoping that increases some of the efficiencies with approvals, but at the same time, there's also some requirements in terms of training. There's an intercultural competency training that someone from your organization needs to do, and I believe Lenita just did it, so she might be able to speak about that a bit. And then there's some onboarding training that needs to be completed before you complete your first endorsement. So you can submit your designation application and then finalize your training and submit your endorsement for your candidates. For the provincial nominee program, we have a little bit more flexibility for some of that programming. The Atlantic immigration program is a federal program that we administer the employer part of that program. For the provincial nominee program, that's really one where we can assess the candidate, and we have quite a bit of flexibility within those programs. So we have a great employer support team. So if you're not finding the answers you need on our website, you can always give us a call. We actually answer the phone. We pick up the phone and we talk to employers, which can be unique these days, and we can help you through that process. So there's the provincial portion. We can provide a letter of support for a work permit, and then we can also provide the nomination or endorsement for permanent residency. So someone is able to come and start working with you quite quickly while they wait for their permanent residency.
Great. No, that's fantastic, and it's good to have that support there to get talk to a person and figure it out. So Lenita, you hinted earlier at some of the programs that you use. Why one program over the other? And do you ever use a hiring partner when you're doing using immigration?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when we started our very first, well, I guess my first foray, like I say, the company has been recruiting for quite some time, and over the years, programs have changed. So that initial recruitment that I was talking about in the late 2000s, that was using the labor market. It's now impact assessment. I think at the time it was an LMAO, and so that was the best avenue. And then some of the rules around that changed and knock codes. So when the Atlantic immigration pilot came along, that was really my first experience, kind of leading that process. And since we've utilized that program as well as the Nova Scotia nominee program, and as Jennifer said, each candidate's situation is different. Number of children or spouse coming with, if they're single, there are income threshold requirements with different programs, how much money they have in their bank account. All of these things factor into which program is going to be the best, to move things forward. I mean, COVID has kind of changed some of the processing times and made delays that otherwise didn't exist. So the Atlantic immigration, program was a bit quicker if you were looking to get someone here sooner and wanted to offer them an opportunity to gain their permanent residency in a fast track capacity, whereas the nominee program was a little bit lengthier and added a little more time to do language training or to complete some of the aspects. And that was earlier. Again, as Jennifer mentioned, these programs have responded to employers' needs. They've changed. And I can say that I'm not 100% up on all of the changes, because one of the, I guess, challenges with recruitment for an employer is the administrative time that it takes to do this. And as we are looking to bring more and more people each year, we now have a person working part-time just on foreign recruitment activities. So, she's more up to date on all of the nuances of the programs. But yes, we have also forayed into using a recruitment partner. So this year, the German butcher master that I mentioned, he is being recruited in part with a recruitment agency through New Brunswick, and we had always kind of shied away from that because of the cost. But in this case, the recruitment agency covers all costs. There's no cost to the employer because the candidate coming over has the means and wants to, of course, increase their exposure and opportunity. And so they pay the recruitment agency directly. So, I mean, as an employer, it's a win-win because, they're taking care of, between the candidate and the recruitment agency, all the work, and you get the benefit of a highly skilled worker coming in a fairly short period of time because, again, they're focused on it. So it fast tracks, and it happens where it would maybe take us 6 to 8 months. Because of all the other activities in our day-to-day, they can make it happen in 4 to 6. So all of the streams, depending on the situation and the urgency of need, can be utilized and are, like I say, certainly have helped our business.
Yeah, that's great. Great to see the little nuanced differences in some of these programs and how you make it work for what it is you're looking for. And with that, I mean, Jennifer, obviously you're working with these businesses who are using immigration to recruit. Talked a bit about the key steps. I'm sure there's some lessons learned, do's and don'ts. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of the things the Atlantic immigration pilot was evaluated, and a couple of the key steps that we know worked and that we wanted to reinforce in the permanent program. So one is the employer driven. So we know that there is that burden on the employer to do some of that paperwork, and we try and streamline it as much as possible. But when the employer is really involved in that process, we know that they're going to want to keep that person when they get here, and they're invested in them and their family, and to ensure that they want to stay and in the province and with that employer for the long term. So one of the key aspects of that is a settlement plan for each candidate prior to them arriving. So the candidate can access that settlement plan from settlement service providers. If they're not here yet, it's called a pre-arrival plan, and one of the service providers that's able to provide that is iSANS in Nova Scotia. There's only 5 across the country, and iSANS is one of them. And then if they're here, it can be one of our settlement partners across the province, such as the YReach, iSANS, that can provide a more detailed settlement plan for not only the candidate, but also the family. So we know that if the whole family needs to be supported for them to be successful in the community. So those settlement plans will tell the spouse how to access employment if they would like, the children, which schools make sense and how to enroll, whether or not there's transportation in the community, things like that are very important for someone to settle. And we often talk about it's not always the big things that help people succeed in communities. Often it is the smaller things. So, an employer giving the person a card when they arrive, a handwritten note saying, we're happy you're here, is just as good as some of those concerns over bigger financial requirements that often are not required.
Yeah, no, that's great. Lenita, you told a great story when we were prepping for this about some of the needs of your new employees. So, how do you anticipate those needs and share the story? It was fun.
Yeah, well, I think, the first experience that I spoke of where we brought a family over on the Atlantic Immigration pilot program from Mexico, and they were coming literally with their suitcases and two children, and so I just thought, if I was in their position, what would make me comfortable or help me settle, and so it was furnishing their home. So I went into the community and put out calls for, pots and pans and bedding and beds, and we, furnished a space for them was the start. Putting groceries in the refrigerator because they traveled, for 12 or 18 hours, picking them up at the airport, driving them around town to introduce them to all of the different, I guess, amenities, getting them to the bank to set up an account, helping them get the kids registered in school, just really acting as, I guess, a concierge, for lack of a better term, to spend those first few days and connecting them with rides because, of course, they didn't come with a vehicle. So it's just all of those things that I think, if, like I say, if we put ourselves in their position, what would really help to make it a great experience for us, and that's really what we're trying to do when they come in. And as far as the workplace itself, to make it a welcoming environment, supporting them if language is an issue, with someone that speaks their mother tongue, if that's a possibility, or possibly documents in their mother tongue to make sure that the training is being understood, acknowledging different religious holidays that might be celebrated, or yeah, just anything, I guess, that, even if you have a staff lunch, is there something in the offering that it works for them? Many of our folks here don't eat pork or don't eat beef. They're vegetarians, they're vegans. So, we've taken steps to incorporate those into our celebration. So it's just all of those little details that I think help to make it a positive experience, and hopefully, as Jennifer said, as an employer, you can retain them long term.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It goes to show you, right? There's some more formal support structures that are in place, but these informal ones can be just as important, maybe more important at that personal level. So kudos to you for taking that on. Jennifer, you talked a bit about some of those supports, and maybe you can chat a bit about retention, how we measure it, that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah, and I think I'm actually going to go back to your previous question because I might have missed the actual response to that. So you had asked about some of the ways that we've revised our programs to help support employers better. We have had 3 major policy changes this year that we're using to really hopefully help employers access our programs more frequently or be able to fill more labor needs. So one is around location of work. So we know that many employers have multiple locations of work. We've seen this often in the food service industry or the long-term care facility industry, where there are many facilities, and if they could have one employee be able to work at more than one facility or work at more than one restaurant, then they'd be able to fill the hours that they need and fill more labor needs. So as long as those locations are close together, and I know that's a little bit subjective, but we want to see how that person can get from location to location easily. We're now able to support a person to work at multiple locations. So previously it was that your work permit needed to have one location, and that was how it was structured. And now we can say that there are multiple locations. So legally, you can work on your work permit on multiple locations. So we've heard that that's going to help support more employers to fill more needs. With that comes the second policy change, which is the hours of work. So traditionally, our programs have worked that it needs to be a full-time job offer, non-seasonal, continuous year-round work. And that still is the case. And the requirement is 1,560 hours that needs to be provided over the full year. Our programs are for full-time permanent employment that the person's going to set up with their family in the long term. It's not for seasonal work. However, one of the requirements that we've removed is the 30 hours a week. So we were seeing that it was a barrier to have to provide 30 hours every week throughout the whole year, that there were times that there was downtimes, people were still getting a few hours, but there was downtimes, and then there was times that people were receiving a lot more hours. And that was not permitted in our programs previously, and now we're able to support that. So I'm really hoping that with those two measures together, being multiple locations and flexibility in hours of work, that we will see more people get more hours and be able to fill more labor needs. And then the third change is around the ability for, if someone loses their employment, to be able to continue to be supported with a new employer. So what we were seeing before was that employers, particularly in the construction industry, in the IT industry, they work contract to contract to contract often. And if they didn't have contracts lined up for 2 years at a time, they didn't feel comfortable using our programs because they couldn't put in that job offer that it was guaranteed an employment offer for those years. Now we're saying we're able to look at your past performance. So if you've been able to employ people previously with the type of contract work that you have, we will support your application into the future, even if it's that contract work. And providing the assurance that if someone is let go of no fault of their own, that they are able to find another employer with that same contract type of work, likely, and continue to be supported with their permanent residence application. Those are some of the just specific changes to our policies that we're hoping to help more employers with this year.
Well, that's great. It's great that you're reacting, and it sounds like you're reacting both to the employer's needs and the employees' needs here in this particular case. So, goes to show we can be nimble when we're offering these programs, which is fantastic because businesses obviously are putting a lot on the line when they're going out. We talked about the timelines earlier in the segment. So, it's a big investment of time, resources in order to recruit immigrants to build the workforce. Lenita, when you're doing this, I mean, you must be constantly searching for efficiencies. You talked about doing things to retain. How do you manage that, and do you use that as a tool to help you, like on recruiting going forward?
Yeah, when you're talking about efficiencies, are you meaning efficiencies within the system itself and the process of recruitment?
Yeah, like what you're doing to make, you talked about trying to think ahead and
Right.
what it is that you're gonna need.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at this stage, now that we have a bit of experience and we're into a bit of a cycle, we know we're starting to project out our needs 12 months in advance, because we know how long the process takes roughly. But from the time you start advertising a position to, when that person lands can be anywhere from 8 to 12 months. It just all depends how well things go on their end. The Atlantic pilot, for example, the onus is more on the nominee or candidate coming in to complete the paperwork. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. The Nova Scotia Nominee Program. So it depends on if they run into delays on their end, getting notarized documents or whatever it is that they need to provide can delay things. But certainly we are looking to plan in advance. I mean, with, Jennifer touched on housing stocks. That's an issue. I think everywhere in Nova Scotia, and particularly challenging in Antigonish as a smaller town, a university town. Between September and April, there's not a lot of available housing. So timing is everything as well, when we plan to bring these people in, so that we can make sure there's housing here. So definitely planning ahead is necessary, and then having the resources. Like I said, we've added that person part-time to just help make sure, because I found when I was trying to do it within my day-to-day, it was taking too long, and it's frustrating then for your candidate or nominee because in their planning, in their mind, oh, okay, I'll be there by September, and if I drag my feet and it becomes December, they may be trying to sell a home, or so it does have to be a well-oiled machine, and lots of communication with your candidates, so that they know all the way along what's happening, and your projected timelines.
Okay, great. No, I mean, that's important. I'm sure you're constantly looking at your bottom line and the impact there, and that planning ahead is so important. Jennifer, earlier we talked a bit about retention of immigrants in Nova Scotia, and I know that there's been remarkable progress there. Can you tell us a bit about how we've done?
Sure, yeah. So retention is a key part of what we do. It's a bit of a continuum. So attraction, selection, and retention, and encircling that is compliance and anti-fraud mechanisms as well. But you need to consider retention in the full aspect of that. When you're attracting the people who are going to who have the right skills for the right jobs, they're more likely to be retained. And then our selection programs, ensuring that the employers are a part of that, and there's good settlement supports. We work very closely with our settlement service providers. We have 18 different settlement service providers that we support across the province to provide settlement services no matter where you are in the province. And one outcome of COVID has been the additional capacity for training and supports online, which people can access no matter where they are in the province. We have a retention rate of 71% in the province. So we're highest in the Atlantic Canada, and we have maintained that rate of 71% for several years. It's 6 to 8 years that we've maintained 71%. We've surpassed Saskatchewan now as well. So it's a respectable retention rate. And also considering that as our landings increase, our retention rate has remained the same. So the absolute number of people that we're retaining is more and more every year. However, we do have aspirations to increase that. So we're looking to increase that to 75%. And we have specific measures in order to do that. So right now we actually have a review of our settlement services to make sure that people can access the right services at the right time for their family. So really that's what we're focused on right now.
Okay, great. Well, we know from experience, I can tell you with our clients, and maybe there are some who are listening in today, how important those settlement services are in order to keep, these great skilled people here, and people that, there's been an investment there as well. So it's good to hear. We do have a question from the audience, and I think it's timely. Obviously, we talked earlier about how lucky we are that we're in Nova Scotia and in Canada. Other parts of the world, there's some different events going on, and in recognition of that, we had someone ask about Ukraine and whether there's any way firms can participate, because we've heard and seen some of the pictures of the migration that's happening there. Jen, any comment on that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That has been heavy on our minds and our hearts for the past few weeks, and particularly for the past week. It's hard to know where to start, because the first reaction from our office, from our government, but also from many employers and people throughout the province, is just how can we help? And so there are some tangible ways in which we're helping right now. Any applications that are coming into our office from Ukrainian candidates, we are expediting, but we're also looking at any of the barriers that might exist in our programming, such as language tests. If there's a language test required, if we can find a way to get that application in through our provincial nominee program and waive the language test, those are some of the things that we're doing. So we're not seeing our programs as a barrier. We're really trying to use our programs to see if we can get more Ukrainians here through our economic pathways. In addition to, we're in communications with the federal government to let them know that we are open and ready and willing to accept Ukraine refugees. if there is a refugee initiative as well. But in terms of our economic pathways, the one requirement that we still need is a job offer. So I would like to put it out to the employers who are on the session right now that if you have job offers and you would like to recruit Ukrainian people to fill those job offers, I would love to receive an email from you. I know Mary Jo's on the line, and we have an employer support team as well, but I had a really productive call this morning with some leaders in the Ukrainian community, and they are doing particular recruitment efforts of Ukrainian candidates in Ukraine. They have contacts there, some fantastic skilled candidates that I believe could meet the needs of employers here. And if you provide me your email, and I'm going to put my email in the chat right now, if you email me, I will do my best to make the connection to the people who are connected to the skilled people in Ukraine right now and see if we can get even more people here through our programs.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Jen. And call to action to all of the employers out there. I think that's wonderful. Thanks for the question to whoever wrote that one in. That was good. So time's ticking down. I think we had one last question here, I guess. And what's your best piece of advice? What little nugget can we leave for employers or partners who may be helping our Nova Scotia companies on immigration? Jen, you want to go first?
I was writing my email and I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Lenita, you ready for that question?
Sure, yeah. I think the main takeaway is for employers not to be afraid to use it, even though you may not understand. It can be a little daunting to think about navigating these programs, but we started from ground zero, and the folks at Nova Scotia Immigration were very helpful every time we needed questions answered or a bit of guidance to walk through the process. They were there, and now we've got in-house kind of written standard operating procedures to follow. So because you can forget steps, but definitely, I think our communities are better, our businesses are stronger. And, this is definitely a huge piece, important piece of economic growth for Nova Scotia moving forward.
No, that's great. That's great advice. Don't be afraid to get out there, right? And there's great resources as listed in the chat line out there for you as well. How about you, Jen? So the question is, what last piece of advice that you give employers?
Yeah, I think Lenita said it very, very well. I'm also happy that that employer did you know is in the chat as well. A lot of the things of the did you know is going to help people with some of those anti-fraud mechanisms. If someone approaches you with something and it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So please reach out to us anytime. We do have a booth at the conference, so if you have questions, you can go to our Nova Scotia Immigration booth and contact our office anytime with any questions. We have a fantastic employer support team who's happy to help.
Great. No, that's fantastic. Listen, thank you both for joining us today. We've learned some great tips about immigration, some tricks to help you get started on the journey and learn, not to be afraid. I think that's good. I can share that at NSBI, when we think about supporting our successful businesses here in Nova Scotia, we think about population growth and attracting investment here to Nova Scotia. We know how important it is to have a successful immigration program. So if you're looking for further information, as Jennifer said, don't hesitate to reach out to Labor, Skills and Immigration. Your NSBI contacts, whether it be your regional business development advisor, trade development exec, or your IA business development executive, we're happy to help refer and put you on the right track there to get in touch with Jennifer and team. So on behalf of the panel, thank you all for joining us today.